just so we can get out of here. Wait till he's done. Hmm? Yeah. Six, 2022 Planning Commission meeting to order. Did you want to do the roll call?
Yes. Chair Elaine Barton,
Here.
Commissioner Patrick Blees,
Here.
Commissioner Eric Brana, absent, Commissioner Rick Gelbman. Here. Vice Chair John Mungy,
Here.
City Council Liaison Lisa Wong,
Here.
and Andrew Weiss is absent. We have Eric Zweber is not attending tonight. Brandy Howe, planning consultant, is here, and then myself, Lisa Ritchie, is the planning secretary.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. We have a quorum. So first item of business is to adopt the agenda. Anybody want to make any changes, or do I just have a motion to adopt the agenda? Moved by Rick. Is there a second?
Second, John.
Second by John. I guess we need, no, we're all physically present, so we can do the vote here. Excellent. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Right, that's done. Then approval of the December 2nd, 2021 meeting minutes. Anybody have any changes or corrections? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I would make that motion.
Second.
Was that you again, Rick?
Yes.
Thank you, Rick. John seconds. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
It was-
Opposed, none?
It was
All right.
Patrick and Rick.
Patrick.
Oh, it's Patrick.
Yeah, Patrick.
Oh, okay.
And Rick. Yeah, you can't tell because mouths don't move.
I know. I'm trying to watch, and it's like, why am I bothering?
When you asked if there were comments, I was thinking we're all used to Zoom meetings where if it's silent, it's silent.
Yeah.
It means nothing. That means that there's no comment.
Well, see, here you can physically raise your hand, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway, on to meeting open to the public. We have nobody here. Is there anybody on Zoom, Lisa? Oh, okay, so she's,
Oh, okay.
okay. No other attendees? Okay. We have no public hearings, so we'll move on to the first item of business, which is to review the park improvement plan. So you said Amber is going to, or she's just available for questions. Are you going to run through it, or did you just want input? If people have read it, how do you want to handle it?
Yeah, let's run through it, and if you have questions, Candace will be able to answer that. I will take notes
Okay,
so that we can forward those recommendations back to the Park and Rec Commission.
well, just to clarify, the reason the Planning Commission reviews it is really primarily for consistency with the goals in the comp plan. So, probably not going to get into a great deal of detail because it's a higher level review.
We don't have to go page by page through it.
I don't see the need. If people have read through it and they had any things that stood out to them or had any questions, I think that would be, what we'd want to discuss, but we certainly don't want to, try to reword or change everything. I mean, I had a couple things that just struck me at a high level, but anybody else have any initial input?
I do.
Yes, Rick?
Actually, it somewhat comes out of the, master plan sessions that we've been going to. And one of the things that has come up repeatedly in that conversation is how do we deal with vacant lots and kind of less formal kinds of park types of situations. I do want to start by, I want to say, I appreciate the work that they're doing, the Park Commission is doing in terms of, keeping our parks nice and really covering that and managing it well. And I guess on 1,570 in our packet.
Maybe maybe you could put that up, Brandy, or whoever has that on their
Yeah.
laptop, just,
They talk real broadly about kind of the three major purposes, and I didn't see it really covered there. I see their focus, and I appreciate that, but somehow I think we need to be coordinating that part of it as well.
that was one of the things that occurred to me because I went back and looked at what's in the comprehensive plan as well, because the big drive in the comprehensive plan, or something that was totally new in this latest comprehensive plan, was the resilience chapter. And that gets into livable cities, healthy populations, and I just went in and looked at it, and I printed out a couple pages because I thought this is really the key element, which is connecting people and places.
Yep.
And fostering, it says fostering a healthy community, park and trail access, multimodal transportation. It all links together with other elements of the comp plan as well. And I think to stress that more so than, and I understand this was just kind of tweaked from the prior plan.
Right.
Which is why there's so much about the economic piece, but that really isn't the key element in the new comprehensive plan.
Okay. Let me ask Candace if she has a comment on that, and then we'll let Brandy share.
I don't have anything to share, but she had asked me to share the screen, if you want to.
Oh, yeah, just if somebody points out a page, then it's easier if we can all
Yeah.
see it, and especially if somebody watches this after on, too, then it'll be on the video. That was on page 15.
Of the packet,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
170.
Page 15 of the packet.
Yes.
yeah, of 107. Well, the new packet's slightly, or is this new packet slightly larger? We got an addendum,
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
thanks to Lisa.
Yeah, all my notes were on this one, so I didn't redo those.
15.
And, connected in with that is the trails.
Yeah.
And how they connect in.
Yes.
You were
Yeah.
talking about that a little bit.
And connections to
It's kind of
downtown,
that same type
but
of-
also other,
Yeah. Yeah.
even connecting the parks with schools, with churches, with people, with places people would go and potentially not have to drive. Just, again, that whole walkability as a benefit, a health benefit, and, healthy lifestyle, that
Yeah.
kind of
Yes.
element. And that was the big piece in the resiliency chapter.
Yeah.
And transportation as well.
Right.
And even parks, trails were a big priority, even in the parks
Yeah.
chapter.
Yeah, very much.
So, and I apologize, we're trying to work the technology
Okay.
at the same time.
Well, that's okay, if you
This is
can't.
page 15 of the Park Improvement Plan, and we want to emphasize the drive is, we want to refer to the resilience chapter.
Well, and the goals, which really, again, the goal of the park chapter is to provide access to parks, trails, and quality parks, trails, and open spaces for all. And that supports as a matter of fact, I think it says it right in, see if I can find.
Well,
Oh, yeah, it's part of the city's vision to provide connectivity between people and places.
Does that make sense to you, Candace? Okay, great.
You know, if, maybe, I would just recommend, they must have a copy of our, just go to the resiliency chapter
Okay,
in the comprehensive plan, but it really, it says a lot of it because it also gets into the environmental protection and the Urban Ecology Center and the Environmental Learning Center and the two lakes, both Casey and Silver Lake, and native vegetation
sure.
and air quality. I mean, that whole thing relates to the park system.
as well as for developers and attracting developers.
Yes.
There's the last paragraph on page 17 of, from the packet, also talks about it, but it isn't really, set up as a purpose or
Yeah.
priority.
Well, and again, I think, sometimes all these things play together.
Yeah.
So you kind of
Yep.
focus on, there are a lot of things, I mean, roads, obviously, that's a plus for developers that we have roads, but that's not your focus for certain elements. And I think that's why you could have just 100 items, benefits and how they all work together. But I do think for this particular piece, that's really the more important element, more so than the maintaining property values. I mean, yes, that is a result, but the health of the people and the community, I think that hits, I think, closer to home for people.
I would agree.
I'm making a note to refer to the resilience,
Well, just grab some language out of there.
yep,
Some descriptive language. I think it does a really good job. I think the transportation does too, but that's so much longer that the resiliency was a little bit shorter, so I thought it made it.
well, let me ask you this, do you think we could put that in addition to what they already have for their purpose, or
Well, I don't think that's a problem. I just think
it should?
I wouldn't
include
have
some
3
of
to
that?
4 paragraphs of just the economic piece. I'd focus on what's in the comp plan
Okay,
as far as this particular element.
okay, and that's fine, I'll certainly pass that along. No, Candace did say, her response to that was, I was just asked not to do any planning work, so that is why it was not included at this time. She was just asked to make revisions given by the parks, and yes, that can fairly easily be incorporated.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, we're not
So,
saying
yes.
change, take that whole thing out. It's just, I think
wanna
that
include
focus
it.
is really important.
Important, absolutely, yeah. And I know Candace had indicated that going forward, and I'll let you speak on to this, Candace. I know that the way our previous park improvement plan was not ideal, and yes, we originally did because we didn't have a template. Other than that, we did kind of go off of that and just update the information.
Yeah.
But I know she had a recommendation for going forward, and probably within a fairly short time frame, wasn't it, Candace, that you were going to recommend? I'll let you speak to that. I don't remember exactly how you had stated it.
Is she on Zoom?
She is on Zoom, but she's just corresponding by chat.
Oh.
I don't know if her microphone is.
Oh, okay. Is that what she got into in like the concluding section, the implementation portion, was that? 'Cause I
Yes,
thought that was
Yes, it was,
I thought that was
exactly.
really a good
Okay, yep,
conclusion and pathway
yes, and she did confirm that just.
going forward, that,
Yep.
because I do think it's been hit or miss
Yes,
for quite some time, and it is important to have a plan, and that's why, just to reinforce, what Rick was saying too, is that's how you make these things happen
and come together,
and
absolutely.
come together when you're looking at the entire picture and what your goals really are. And I think that's, the purpose should be getting at the goals,
At the goals, absolutely.
not at what the outcomes, like I say, economic and that kind of stuff, but more the goals, which is lifestyle, multimodal transportation, connecting people in places, livability. And I think there will be some overlap here with the downtown, or downtown master plan, the redevelopment master plan, and how this is all gonna come together, and we
Together.
don't know how that will all work out
Yeah.
going forward. It's probably just gonna be when the opportunity arises.
It's been discussed in our redevelopment master plan meeting that
Yeah,
they would like to have.
so excuse me, anything else, Rick, that,
Yeah, this is more of just a content type of item on 49 of 170. Basically Casey Lake Park. I've recently been hearing a fair amount about the aerator and the water quality,
Yes.
and I didn't see that mentioned at all. And I think that'd be worthwhile, at minimum mentioning, because there's a lot of people over there that are very interested in that and are working hard to make improvements to the water quality.
I know in the packet it shows that it's blue, which was nice to see again. Tracy Lake.
oh, is it?
Yeah, the picture on here is 2010 and it's all blue.
Oh, yeah, it hasn't been blue for a while. That's unfortunate, although supposedly it's healthy, it's just,
It's
terms of the water
healthier than it
quality.
was in the past, but the appearance
the appearance
isn't
is,
a-
Yeah.
isn't
Unattractive.
yes.
Towards the end of the summer,
I've seen people out there,
Mhm.
you know, in their little boats.
Harvesting,
Yeah,
yes.
but the other thing, now that you mention that, there was a comment somewhere in the plan about Colby Hills needing a retaining wall.
Yes.
And wasn't that part of the plan, the playground change plan anyway? But I didn't see that mentioned in there either. And I think that was part of the plan that just hasn't been done yet and probably needs to get
Needs to be done. I
completed.
agree. Yep, I think you're correct on that.
Just one little thing on this, this chart that shows, it's page 50. I like it, that's why I like to use this board portal, because I can print out the pages with my little notes, and then it tells me the page number it's on. Now, if I could just print the notes, my comments, that would be better than having to print the page. But anyway, up at the top, where it's small, SNP, 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 blah, 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 it has, for McKnight, Casey, and Silver, it has RP. Probably should be CP, Community Park, right?
McKnight, Casey, and,
Well, it's 50 of the plan,
Plan, yeah.
because I brought
aren't they
that
regional
attachment up.
parks?
Hmm?
I believe they're regional parks.
They're community parks.
Based on the definition in this report.
Yeah.
Community parks.
They're community parks. That's what's in the comprehensive plan. That's the standard, those are the standard definitions that the Met Council provides. So they're referred to, yes, as community parks, and that's,
For the Met Council?
well, and in the comprehensive plan, too. Yeah, regional parks has a very specific definition.
Yeah, I think somewhere in here too that there was some, caveat in where they said, here, this is how the Met Council will,
Right. And now this uses community parks, yeah. I just happened to notice, why I noticed that, I don't know. The only other, well, I'll just do my little detailed comments as I was paging through. But on page 49, there's the thing of all the amenities. Well, not all of them, but various amenities. And on the playgrounds, I think it would be helpful, and maybe this is a going forward, would be my guess, and probably that's already in the plan, but to differentiate between the age groups for playgrounds, 2 to 5 versus 5 to 12. Because I have no idea how many we have for toddlers versus how many we have for the older children.
So, just so I'm on the same page as you, are you referring to page 129 of 170, which is page 49 of the parking?
It's page 49, and it has facility type and number of existing in the city at the top.
So you'd kind of like a breakdown of,
2 to 5 and 5 to 8.
okay.
I know the one in the park by me is 5 to 12, which, that's one of those, well, I don't know where the closest 2 to 5 one is.
Okay, and that can probably happen if somebody can give us the answer before this goes to print.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And Candace did say, she did agree that they are community parks, and she stated that the chart does need to be updated, and she said, we changed the plan to be specific to match correct designation.
Okay, yeah. Well, that again gets just a consistency with the comp plan. Sometimes it's that technical, and other times it's just, bigger picture was the first issue. The other thing I did notice is the Environmental Learning Center isn't addressed anywhere. Or Central Park, which is essentially that little spot of land downtown, but it's
And there was
listed as a
discussion
park.
on that, yeah, there was discussion on that, whether or not they were truly classified as parks.
Well, they are in the comprehensive plan.
Okay,
That's my point of reference, is what's in the comprehensive plan.
okay. And you said it was the environmental,
Environmental Learning Center,
okay.
yeah. Used to be the PCU, the Postal Credit Union, when they had naming rights, the Postal Credit Union. But it was still the Environmental Learning Center.
And then what was the other one? I thought there was.
Central Park. That's right at the corner of Sepulveda and Margaret. It's a little triangle of land by the parking lot. I think it's maybe a fifth of an acre or something like that,
Is that where
maybe.
that big gas meter is?
No, it's kind of, I think it's across from like the statue, the Crittenden.
by like the bus stop?
Yeah,
South of the
Yeah.
dentist's office.
Didn't know that was there.
and again, it's just to make sure we don't just not
Yep.
address those. I would think the Environmental Learning Center is probably similar to the Urban Ecology Center, although it is the Environmental Learning Center has a great deal of language about it in the surface water chapter of the
Okay.
comprehensive plan. Why do I know that? I searched.
Why wouldn't
Because
you?
it's a flood
Mitigation.
mitigation, yes.
There is reference to the Urban Ecology Center on page 58 of the packet.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
On page 58 of the packet, there's reference to the Urban Ecology Center.
Yeah, the Urban Ecology Center, yes.
I thought that was what you had mentioned.
No, the Environmental Learning Center.
Oh, well, that's what it is. It's called the Environmental Learning Center. What's the Urban Ecology Center?
They're two different things.
What is the Urban Ecology Center? If
The
it's
Urban Ecology Center is across south by,
Behind the school bus.
yeah, behind the school bus, where the Gateway Trail is.
I didn't
On McKnight.
I
The Environmental Learning Center is on 11th, across from Target. Used to be called Target Pond as well, right across 11th.
Okay, then
So yeah, they are two different things, both kind of overseen by Ramsey Washington Watershed.
and I think the zoning map shows it incorrectly.
I think you're right. I agree.
I'm assuming that we're not checking things like typos and grammar and stuff like that. I didn't go through it with that kind of level of detail, so I saw a few things here and there, but I'm assuming that's somebody else's job to prove.
Yes, and
Report.
depending on what version you're looking at, I had one that had the annotations printed out, so any of those typos would be on there. If you do see something, I'd be happy to write it down, and then we can make sure.
I can give it to you after.
Okay.
If it's little stuff like that, it's not worth bringing up in the meeting.
Okay,
I'll make notes of it if I see things.
okay, sounds good, thank you.
I can always just share my file with you.
Oh, well, you know, on page 11, now, again, this is 11 of the plan, of the park improvement plan.
Oh, that's blank.
Is that a holding space for a map?
Let me look at the index.
Oh.
No, that's on page 7. We do need to, inventory conditions, small park. Yes, that needs to be deleted because I think in our previous plan, there was a title page, just inventory and conditions. So we can delete page 11.
Well, I have a page 11 that's the park classification specialty park.
Yeah.
So maybe it was deleted in one of, I had two
Two versions?
versions of it, one with that, with your annotations and one without. And so maybe I was using the one without the annotations, so. That might not be the one in our packet. I think ours has the annotations.
7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
But it was hard to make my own annotations when there were already annotations on the page.
I know, that's, my page 11 is park classification specialty park. Okay, so this must be the one that you're referring to?
Yes. Yes. And I was, the fourth bullet under prescription,
Yeah,
you know, and this is, maybe it's just that, for some reason, the last sentence just doesn't, you know, service users from outside the local community, that I just don't, I'm not exactly sure what that means. But I do think maybe we could make the point on that one that both Rotary Park and the Urban Ecology Center are located along the Gateway State Trail, which serves as an access point to the downtown area. I mean, I think that's the bigger
As
Point.
well as Rotary Park.
so we have Rotary Park, and what were the other two?
Rotary Park and the Urban Ecology Center.
Oh, just those two. Okay.
Yeah, they're both located along the Gateway State Trail. And the trail serves as an access point to the downtown area. You know, we've talked before, well, at least I've mentioned before, kind of disappointment that we haven't taken advantage of making those connections into downtown when they, you know, when the opportunity might have been there. And I think this is why something like this and getting this in a document
Yeah.
as part of that bigger picture can be so helpful. Because when we were talking about Brothers Bistro, and there's Henry right there, there's an entrance, but we haven't maintained it. It's almost unusable, right from the gateway.
Yeah. And I don't think it'd take a lot of financing to
No,
make it much more desirable, much
Yes.
more welcoming.
and attractive.
than-
We
yeah.
also get into the aesthetics of it, you know, because it's so overgrown, it's just really unattractive. Not something you'd probably even want to, you wouldn't think it would lead anywhere.
Yeah,
By the
where
look
am
of
I
it.
gonna end up, you know?
Yeah, where am I going to end up? Right. So that was maybe one of those wording things that,
Okay. Under the prescription for it is where I,
yeah, that fourth bullet, I would just ideally reword the second sentence. Because I think that was the example, that, or specifically, yeah.
Got it. All right, anything else?
I think it really is, the starting point, more than anything else. And I really, I do think that the concluding portion of it really makes some very good points about the need to do some master planning. That is the one thing we don't have. And I was happy to see there was a lot of, not entirely specific, but at least the recognition that we have a lot of work to do on accessibility. Because we have very poor accessibility within our parks. And that is something that flies in the face of the goal. Particularly given some of the newer housing, for senior housing and, 55 and above, and a lot of, even just the apartments. Remember when the apartments went in on Anchor Block there, and we talked a lot about the bicycle storage? And they were they were very well aware that people who own bicycles and who are gonna live there, they keep them in their apartments. They don't store them, outdoors or anyways. So you have this, this mix of users that I think get lost sometimes. So,
We're working on that, so that everyone's included, and
Okay.
well, yeah, the needs analysis, that was a very good point to
Those
make.
new
You really,
townhouses that are going in too are pretty close to that one park off of South there.
Yes.
behind the
Yep.
Holiday Station.
yeah. Well, they're close to right across from the Urban Ecology Center, right near the gateway.
Yeah.
But the closest, what I would consider park with, typical neighborhood amenities would be Northwood. Because Colby has very little. It also needs a plan to do something with the vacant lot. I don't think,
well, they're currently using it as an ice skating rink, as you know.
I know, yes, I know, and I really do appreciate that. Like I say, I've already seen it in use.
Yeah, well, it was requested by some neighbors.
Yes, I know,
Oh, so you knew that as well.
at the neighborhood night out.
Okay, well, it did circle back, and,
So there, it would be used, it's just, it doesn't, it's a tricky one. It's a tricky one. The other tricky piece, I think, one of the challenges is getting that broad range of input
yes.
that you're really looking for. I don't even know how you contact, like a large apartment building, I don't know how you contact those people to let them know, but those are the people who normally don't even know. There might be some kind of meeting or get-together, they don't necessarily live that close. Some of them probably don't even know where the parks are or where the closest park is. But I've thought about that a few times, is how do you get to those people? Maybe you take it to them, instead of saying, come to us.
I know we also discussed during our meeting too, was maybe to take some of those spots on the main drag and make them into park with benches so people can enjoy, like during the car show and things like
Yeah.
that. That say open for redevelopment, still leave the sign up,
Right,
but make it pleasing for people to be able to. And then if we sell it, that's great, it's on the tax dole. If
Exactly.
we don't, we can still use
but
it.
in the interim,
Yep.
make it useful and make it more
Inviting.
aesthetically pleasing, yeah, and inviting, yeah, instead of just letting it go. Well, and I do know we had that discussion recently about when the parking lot behind K&J is redone, about potentially getting a connection from that out onto 7th, but that could also be just a small, not a parklet, because that's a very particular kind of thing, but just a small little seating area, maybe, something like that, but green space. Again, just interspersed, doesn't have to be a big deal.
Even if it's just a nice walking area.
Yeah,
Walk through,
exactly.
make it
Yeah, that's both transportation and just the aesthetics of it, and the ability to sit down, rest, whatever. Anyway, so Patrick, did you spot anything else, or did you have any specific high-level
No, nothing that's extraordinarily important.
Okay.
It would be easier to just hand that over to.
Well, if you did spot any typos, you can always email Lisa, and that she can forward them on, right?
Yep. Yep.
I might have spotted one or two and didn't write them down or something, but, because that wasn't what I was
I
worried
would create more of them if I touched it, so.
Yeah, I think, like I say, I was really, I thought it concluded very well. I thought it really kind of made the points of where we are right now, because a lot's been done in the last, 5, 6 years on getting some of the old, outdated equipment cared for.
Yeah.
So we're in a much better place than we were when the first park improvement plan was made. And going forward, I think it's important to understand these plans. That includes the redevelopment master plan and all of them. They live on beyond the people who develop them or are sitting at various chairs voting on things. So that's why, you really want them to carry some meaning, and you want them to be used. And that's particularly by the council, when it makes its decisions. Don't just pretend that plan isn't there and wasn't really thought through. Which is why I think it's important to have some strong language in it in some cases. And I think the concluding portion really makes very good points.
Absolutely. I should add to that, Candace has stated many methods for community engagement to gather input as part of a needs analysis, and yes, we go where they are. So they're definitely,
Yeah, I know WSB has done that.
yeah.
I mean, a lot. So, yeah, they think they're in a very good position to have like open house type things where it's very free-flowing. It's more similar to the community cafes, from the comp plan where, it was just throw these things out there.
Well, one thing I can say is John Stark, our new city manager, who just joined us on January 3rd, has a background, as you know, in EDA, but he actually, I just learned this, he was a certified urban planner. So he's got that education.
Excellent.
Yes, yes.
That's very helpful.
So he will know, and
Yeah.
he'll know what it takes to execute what we need done.
Yeah. Well, I recall back when, that's a personal comment, when the 19th Avenue street project was creating such a ruckus. And I think it was you, Rick. I think you spoke at the council meeting, at the public hearing about it. I spoke. And I remember your comments regarding, I think it was you who essentially said you believe in planning, that plans matter. This is a good example of, how they can get you moving if you, if you do it and then follow them.
Follow through, right.
So I would say, with those changes, just the focus, at least from a comp plan, is on what the comp plan says as far as the overarching goals are, just to make sure we've got that focus strongly stated in there, and that's where we started the discussion. Other than that, it's just some minor things I think some of us spotted as we were paging through. Lisa, did you have anything in particular that occurred to you?
In terms of like the overarching, no. Some minor things on the implementation side. Just the edges on the volleyball court, that's really dangerous. That's all. But other than that, really, I think the plan is really well done. I appreciate the budget aspects of it. That's really helpful for us at council to kind of have those budget discussions around
Yeah.
and get the ball moving on those parks and trails. So I
Well,
do
one
appreciate that.
One thing we have to add to that is, those numbers are clearly estimates, and as
Right.
the projects come to fruition, they will go out for bid, and you'll have closer real numbers for each
Right.
project. I know that was one of the concerns that the Park and Rec Commission had, is they thought the numbers were really high on a lot of the things. But when it comes down to it, we're gonna know what we're working with when the project does come along.
Well, and I think realistically, given some of what we're talking about, I think we need to understand, we might be getting involved in, council might be getting involved in some bonding.
Yes.
If you really want to make some things happen, if they're important enough, you don't just say, well, it's too much, so we'll scrape by and do something else that's not going to get the city where it wants to go. So some of these, I agree, the costs look high, but I also think that the council and probably the park commission isn't entirely aware how much some prior projects have actually cost.
Sure.
Because the money hasn't come out of the park fund entirely. It's come from other pieces
Yeah.
of the city budget. So, they didn't seem unrealistic to me, at least for some of them. But, I don't know all the details. But they also included, I think there was a caveat in there that the work was being done by bonded contractors or something like that. And I think in the past, we've tried to rely on Public Works to do it, which, again, sometimes that's nice, but that costs money too. We just have never factored that cost in. We've just absorbed it out of the salary budget.
Well, and having those costs, also opens up the opportunity to potentially pursue a grant
Yep.
of some sort, which is really nice.
Yep.
Here again, John Stark's background will really help with that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It just occurred to me, I had one detailed question. And that is, Polar Park is identified as a small neighborhood park, correct?
I think so.
I saw that somewhere on one of these pages. That I had to.
Yes,
Okay.
page 13.
Okay, and my question was why? Now, I'm looking at the comprehensive plan, which has the chart of all our parks and open spaces and trails, and it shows Polar Park at 2.83 acres, which is larger than Tower Park. Well, it's bigger than Tower Park, which is 2.67. Now, there may be a reason.
So I did correct that, it's 2.27, is what I found out, the actual sizes. Candace, do you know if the category of park is it identified by, is it actually off of the acreage of the park? Or how are they classified? She used the previous classification on that one. So is it classified by acreage? Or how are they determined? Usually under 3 is small, which this one is.
Okay,
But you said Tower Park, so what
Tower
category
Park is under 3.
is under, in what
And it's,
category?
I don't necessarily have a problem with it. It's just when I was reading it, because it was one of the things that had more detail, it seemed like there was a lot being done there. That got into potentially when around $300,000 worth or something like that I don't remember
Be a
exactly,
lot
but,
more stuff in Tower Park than.
but it has a lot, but
Oh,
it
I
would
see.
end up with more or comparable to what Tower Park has. And I thought, well, Tower's a large neighborhood park.
Yes, I do agree. I think Tower Park should be moved to a small park based on the size.
They're going by.
I don't know, because I don't know
Yep.
why they were identified that way. That would be something I think
If it goes by amenities, then Polar
Yeah.
Park is less than Tower Park.
yes,
Because
right
Polar
now,
Park has a lot more stuff in it.
yes.
So,
But if you add a lot
If
more,
you do land, then it would be,
yeah, I already did look up the acreage, and in my annotations, I have Tower Park at 2.23, and I have Polar Park at 2.27. So I think they should both be categorized under the small neighborhood parks, and I'll make notations on the hard copy.
well, Lisa,
Yep.
just let me say, I'm looking at what's in the comp plan.
Oh,
This is our, because it shows the acreage.
okay, well, I looked this up on the county map, so
No,
I'll
I
have to
would,
look
I
at the
guess
comp
I
plan.
would go with the comp plan if I were you.
Okay. Just for consistency. All right.
Pardon me?
what does the comp have it at?
It has Polar at 2.83, because in some cases, it might be that there's right-of-ways in there, or goodness knows what, but,
Sure.
but this all of this adds up to the total figures we have used for our parkland. So it had Tower at 267, Polar at 283, and Housie was 296, not much
Yeah,
more.
barely. And
Yeah.
tower, when you take the water tower circumference out and the water tower, and the
Yeah.
cell tower is out, there's much less park there.
Yeah, space.
Yep.
Usable, so to speak, yeah.
They may have a different criteria.
That's
they're
what I'm
using
thinking it
besides-
is.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I just don't know how that was done, but I just thought
Regardless,
maybe
we should
that
be
could get
consistent with
clarified
the
somehow.
comp plan. We should, don't,
Especially if we're going to add a lot more
okay,
to Polar, I guess.
okay.
It just, for some reason, popped in my
So-
head.
Candace added some classifications will just have neighborhood park and mini park for those more around 1 acre. So we could change classifications.
Yeah, mini used to be like,
Dorothy
what,
Park, I think,
Dorothy
would
and
be a
Colby
mini,
was
yeah.
under an acre, and Country Club was under an acre, Central, obviously, under an acre. And those were, at least in the comp plan, they're mini parks, but they were kind of combined with small neighborhood. And so that became the category for the park improvement plan. Again, I just don't know how Polar in particular, because it's larger than the typical small park.
Yeah, so would you agree that it could be changed to just neighborhood parks, and then if anything's under an acre, we could call it a mini park?
Oh, I mean, I don't have a problem with however they're categorized. They are neighborhood parks, that's how they're classified. They were just broken down to small and large for the park improvement plan.
Okay, so yeah, that was Candace's recommendation. So
Okay.
I think that's a great idea.
Okay, because in some cases, you never know, especially when you're designing, if you're gonna take a space and just say, well, let's just redo the whole thing.
Yep.
You might be able to get more in there than you thought you could, because the way it's laid out now just isn't as productive or as good a use of space.
Okay, got it.
Okay. Okay,
All right,
thank you.
sure.
All righty. And if anything occurs to anybody between now and, the next week, shoot it off to
Yep.
Lisa.
Send me an email and
You know,
we'll get it updated.
you're sitting there in the cold by your fireplace and you're reading through the plan, you think, oh, wait a minute, I have a question. Okay, let's move on to, review of the open meeting law as it pertains to commission meetings via Zoom.
All right, thank you for joining us, Candace.
Yes, thank you, even though we couldn't hear you or see you.
Now, and we'll move on to. So this was the code that Soren had forwarded to me, if you had any questions about it. I also included in the packet a couple of emails that I received for specific questions that came up along the way with different commissions. He noted that individuals cannot vote on items via Zoom from their home. And then one other thing that we talked about was the location of the person attending remotely must be documented in the notice. Must be an open public, or open to the public, such as a hotel lobby, library, or something of that nature. And all votes must be conducted via roll call.
So if they're at home, even if you do a roll call, they can't vote because that's not a open to the public location? I mean, essentially, they can't participate.
Correct, so that was, we were able to do that when we were under the governor's mandate.
Right.
We had to
Right.
operate differently, but now that we're not, you cannot vote from your
Okay,
home, or via Zoom.
okay.
Is the legislature going to be looking at that as something to change?
I
Based-
haven't heard that. I would have to imagine if COVID continues, that something will have to be done, or maybe we'll go back to
Maybe
the,
locally.
right.
It seems
Right.
like there's a lot of learning experience that we've had with it, and there could be improvements, I think, that would make it more accessible to people.
Yeah.
Yeah. We need to start a lobby on that one.
All right, get on it.
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, I like that we're continuing, that the, council is continuing, and we're continuing to at least have the Zoom access for people.
Yes,
Because and to have it available on YouTube, because not everybody is always available the night of a meeting, but they might still be very interested, or they might hear something or read something in the newsletter and think, oh, I didn't know about that, and want to go back and check it out, and see what happened, or, why somebody made a decision they made. So I just think it's such a great tool. But yes, I don't think, I understand why the people who are conducting, who are members of the commission, they do have a different responsibility, to show up to the meetings, I guess, whenever possible. And I actually had asked Lisa about the voting, because I recalled when Patrick was traveling, and I remember when we did the votes, we were just doing the voice votes, and it occurred to me, I have no idea if Patrick even voted.
It's interesting to note, I think, in Soren Maddox's email, looks like it's an email, that location and person attending remotely must be in the notice and open to the public. And that's public places. It's a hotel lobby, it's at whatever. He makes specific reference to can't vote from your home.
Right.
So it looks as though you can vote if you're in a public place and it's
Yes.
published.
You have to be in a public place, and voting publicly is really what it boils
Yeah.
down to.
Yeah, where people can go if they want to.
Right,
So you could vote from the Grand Jamaica Hotel
right,
lobby
yeah,
if it were published.
I'll see for you. I'll take that assignment on.
yeah.
Katie, but you'll do it.
At the bar. Try it at the bar. Yeah,
All right.
the
As long
key is
as long as you can build the expense.
acting in public.
Right.
That's the bottom line. You have to be acting in public. I just wanted to get that clarification because I thought, oh, I think I'm probably doing this wrong.
You're not the only person that's been, yeah, we had this question in the Arts and Culture Commission as well.
Oh, did you?
Yep,
I think every commission.
everyone, yeah.
Well, I think people kind of got into, hey, this is kind of handy. I can just
Yes.
attend from home.
Yes, yes.
Well,
And the other thing we learned this week, when Candace wanted to participate by Zoom, I wasn't sure if it had to be published on the agenda prior of her being in attendance via Zoom and list her location. But that does only pertain to the commissioners.
Yeah,
or council
yeah.
members.
So not staff or, okay.
the public body, so to speak.
Yes, yep.
Yeah.
Thank you for looking
Thank you for
into
getting that clarified.
Yeah, let's see.
Okay, and then now old businesses to review the draft sign ordinance.
Let Brandy take over.
That's you, Brandy?
Yes, it is. I have a brief presentation.
Do you have your, is there a mic by, do you have a
Oh,
mic?
Here, no,
I can use this one.
you got that one?
Just make sure it works.
Yep, it does. Try to be louder. I have a brief presentation that Lisa's going to bring up here. This is mostly going to be, I would imagine, a discussion about where we are and where we're going to go with electronic signs. Let me refer to my notes here. So what you received in your packet was the latest draft, and I tried to make it evident what has changed and what has been retained based on our conversations in the past couple of months. So one thing of note was that I thought that it would be prudent to change the location of the sign ordinance in the overall code. And so I suggested making it its own unique chapter. So instead of being a section within the zoning ordinance, it'll be a chapter within the land development code. And so that has been included, and if that is acceptable, we'll just keep on going with the numbering scheme as proposed. And the other sections of the ordinance that we've talked about and have more or less, gosh, that sure is small. I need to make my font bigger.
Actually, I'm trying to get my view for the full screen.
Oh, if you,
I thought it was this icon right
Yep,
there.
it is.
It's not
doing it?
working, no.
oh,
Oh, wait. Yeah, no, it's not.
I'm gonna need to get glasses, but what we've done to date so far, the introductory provisions, the applicability section, purpose statement, and as of the last meeting, we added the interpretation. So if there was something that an applicant wanted to do and it wasn't listed in the sign code, an interpretation would come to the Plan Commission and you could make a determination on whether or not it was acceptable. The permitting section has been updated, the exemptions and prohibited signs. So those are all the things that we've discussed in the past and I think are more or less good to go. If you want to move to the next slide. So in the draft, the items that we can discuss are the definitions. So as directed, I pulled in all of the definitions from the existing code so you could see those. I have added some new ones and I've crossed out some old ones where it felt applicable. And then I have added general sign regulations, the computations, which include the location, height, area, and setbacks on property, and the materials, construction, and maintenance of signs. So those are the new sections. And then the last thing that we could discuss is the electronic signs. So currently, your code includes a definition for electronic signs, but doesn't really indicate how they're regulated. So as you can see from the first slide, there was a picture of Cowern Elementary, and that was an electronic sign. And apparently it was acceptable back when that permit was pulled. But it would be nice to get some rules on the books to indicate exactly where we want them, what kind they are, and how they function in terms of messages, message color, how they transition, and that sort of thing. So I included a little bit of a report in the memo about electronic signs, and a lot of the information that I pulled was from the International Sign Association, and I included a link to their website, and they had some pretty handy videos that kind of demonstrated what the differences are in terms of message hold time and also the different transition options. So I included a link in this presentation for all of those if we wanted to view them. But at this point, I think I'd just like to open it up for discussion. questions or comments about the draft?
Did you want to, right now, just discuss the electronic signs, or did you want to discuss all that you presented now that it's kind of starting to get filled in?
Yeah, I think that wherever you want to lead the discussion is fine, but ultimately it would be good to discuss everything.
Okay. So what do you all have questions, concerns, comments to make about?
I have a wording issue on 154 of 170. On
Which page is
the-
that?
That's page,
No, I mean, what does it have on it?
it's got pictures of signs at the top, First Bank on the left
Okay,
of Kansas.
maybe you could put that up?
Yep, 154, did you say?
Yes, yes. And it's relatively minor, but it changes the meaning significantly. Let's see, it looks like third last line, further staff recommends the message dwell time be limited to 8 seconds. I think we want a minimum of 8 seconds.
Oh,
That
that
ought to
is
be
important.
listed in there.
So maximum.
If the maximum is unlimited, if they want to leave it the same for a day or a week or a year, that's okay with us. It's just, we don't want it changing more rapidly than 8
Correct.
seconds.
Yep, okay. Thank you for that clarification.
So we're changing it.
On that same page,
Um,
in that same paragraph, the recommendation is to prohibit electronic message board on pylon signs. Do we have any currently on a pylon? What's the Dairy Queen sign on? Is that a pylon?
I was wondering if you maybe took any definitions from the ISA
No, I did not.
guidelines, because there might be some good things in there too. Just, like I said, a pylon sign, my understanding of a pylon sign is it's on posts.
That was mine too.
And a monument sign is set like this piece of cabinetry here on the ground, on a foundation.
Yeah,
But a
but if you look
pylon
at-
sign is on posts, one or more posts. And I believe the Dairy Queen sign is in fact a pylon.
I
by that
I
definition.
couldn't remember what it is on.
Yeah,
I'm gonna,
The sign at Casey Lake Park is a monument sign.
Pardon me?
Casey Lake Park is a monument sign.
Yeah, yeah. No, I was thinking of the ones that are in the air. You've got the gas stations.
Yeah,
You know, the two holidays have them, certainly Hy-Vee has one. And I remember spotting, I hadn't seen the Dairy Queen one before, but I was sitting at the light and thought, oh, when did that go up?
Used to have the one out front where they changed the letters.
Yeah, yeah.
The new owners put that one up.
But I've never really looked at what it's mounted on, so I don't know. I mean, I guess my concern would be, we'd be creating that as a non-conforming sign.
so to be clear, you're saying that the Dairy Queen has an electronic
Yes,
sign
it's
now?
got an electronic screen at the top.
Okay.
I applied for a permit for that.
Pardon? Well, hopefully they did.
I can check.
Hopefully they did.
When did they change it?
I don't know.
About 3 years now, I think?
Has it been that
Oh, okay.
long?
It would have been long before my
You're
time.
like the DQ historian.
I didn't see it in the permits that you provided to me.
Okay. I only noticed it because it changed. You know, it was one of those where they had some kind of almost animated thing going on, so I noticed it. Otherwise, I just don't usually pay much attention to those things.
yeah.
But and the reason that you would recommend prohibiting them is?
Aesthetics and safety for vehicular traffic. If you've got a lot of activity, visual stimulation, I think, I don't know if this is scientifically proven, that it's not as safe for pedestrians or bikes or whatever if you've got too much going on in the streetscape.
Okay. I would just like to, so
This goes
Patrick,
back quite a bit.
what would you say the holiday sign, what sign would that be? That would be a monument?
It would be, no, I think that's a pylon. I think so.
It's a
I
free,
think both of the holiday stations have pylons.
that's my thinking as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to think about the Hy-Vee. The Hy-Vee probably is as well.
Oh,
So I'm
yes,
looking
Or
at
the,
the holiday.
I'm sorry, the Quick Trip.
the Quick Trip, yeah.
Thank you.
Can I get a clarification here? The holiday station that's just up here on Margaret Street, is that one that we're
Yeah.
referring to? I don't know how up to date this photo is, but they have a pylon sign, and the only thing that's digital on it is the gas numbers. Am I incorrect, or is there a different sign out there?
There's a sign that has a digital board,
Display.
so to
Not
speak.
the
They don't
full
change the
price?
message a lot, but there is one. Because they weren't allowed to when they put it in. That was the first one I think the city allowed, and then,
Oh,
I just changed it. If you look here, this is the old Dairy Queen sign. You see that they
there,
probably-
yep.
So then they changed it to one where they connect electronic, so I'm looking at Google. So now it has ones where words come up like a regular,
Yeah.
like Collins
Yeah.
sign would be.
Well, now look up the holiday.
This was done November of 2016, this photo. So
I stand corrected. I had to zoom in closer. It wasn't showing up. It is on the holiday sign. It's right underneath of where the gas prices are. It just is not.
Okay,
It didn't photograph very well. It's kind of blacked out.
yeah.
Yeah.
But you're right. There is precedence for having those in the community as.
Exactly. I mean, I'm not saying, I think it makes sense in some cases, particularly when you need that kind of visibility from a highway.
And I know St. Pete's is looking at putting one in as well.
Now that, I question, well, not a pylon,
No,
though.
excuse me, no, that would be the monument.
Monument.
I mean, I can see it around, that's just it. I hate to prohibit something because we do have the highway and, you know, there's a grade there and it makes, when there's a business that depends on highway traffic, you know, they need to have some visibility. So I don't know what to say about that. Maybe in certain districts, it would be okay, and in others, it wouldn't. You know, I don't think you'd want one in the middle of a residential district, but I don't think we're going to allow pylon signs there anyway.
Right. Yeah, it's a community's choice, and I think that you're making some pretty good points, that those districts that would have businesses that would be fronting the highway are gonna have those zoning categories
Yeah.
that would allow for that type of signage anyways.
Yeah,
So I think it's just a recommendation. We take our direction from Planning Commission and Council.
any,
Well, that Cowan one, that's nowhere near any kind of a traffic area. It's just school.
yeah, and that's a monument one.
Yep, and that's probably what St. Pete's is looking at. the same
Yes.
thing.
Yeah, I would guess,
imagine.
yeah.
Yes,
But it's gonna light up.
yep.
Well, and that, what's the
And
What's
is that
the
more
church on-
safety issue
on,
is
McKnight?
the words,
They've
North
got-
Haven now. North
the-
Haven?
No, yes, they've got one too.
the location of it being up.
Why, I don't know, because they always have very short little messages, but, you know,
All over the place.
but it beats going and changing it by hand, I guess.
Brightness and the
Yeah.
just
Okay,
stimulation from all directions.
I'm closing Dairy Queen now. I'm getting hungry.
maybe they deliver.
Yeah.
You could, you know,
You don't
text
Or-
them.
or What do they call it, dash door, DoorDash?
DoorDash.
Yeah,
You don't have to worry about it melting
No
tonight.
kidding, they come even harder than it left with.
well, I want to get some clarifying questions, if you don't mind, because I did write down some questions. And I know we've gone over this, but again, sometimes the more you look at this and the more it starts to come together, it still raises a few questions. So on page, well, it's page, in the definitions section, it's the third page. I don't know what it is in the packet. I apologize.
Is there a page number in the bottom?
No, because I just accessed the
Oh.
document. I didn't do the entire packet.
Page 1, you said?
It's the definitions with, it's the third page of the definitions.
It's page 155,
Thank you.
the packet.
I just had a question about, we still have definitions for construction sign, directional sign. And I guess I'm wondering why.
Why wouldn't we?
Well, isn't that really, again, isn't that just content-based
So
the way?
context.
I mean, do
That's a
we
good-
need them? Aren't they just potentially a type of temporary sign?
The construction sign would be.
Yeah.
Directional signage would not.
And,
So think of.
but that would be a, trying to think of what kind of sign that would
Think
be.
of a drive-through, that has multiple entrances. So enter here, exit here. I would call that a direct.
Don't we have that somewhere else? Or is that in the permitted things that aren't, require a permit? Oh, on-premise sign, potentially. Oh, that's right, we also have political sign, which we probably don't need. I'll have to go looking for that later, but it did occur to me that the whole, distinction was if you have to read the sign, then it's content-based.
Yes,
I think I understand what this is getting at. I'm just not certain. So just something to toss out there.
Yeah, I think that one's gonna take a little bit of noodling on my part.
Yeah.
Political sign and construction sign, I think you're correct, those could probably go
Yeah,
out.
because those are just a kind of temporary sign. The other was, we have flag and flag sign. And the flag sign is specific to, well, appears to be specific to advertising a business or service. So, is that how, am I reading that correctly?
You're asking if that is,
Does it mean any flag, or does it only mean a flag that is advertising a business or service?
well, the discussion that we had last month was differentiating any flag, like a national flag or, the city's flag or decorative flag from something that's intended to, promote something, promote a product or a business.
But again, now you're getting into, you have to,
Yeah.
you have to
into
read
content.
that to figure out whether it's advertising something or not. I guess I just, I'm not certain why we just don't define a flag sign,
You're making.
Well, the way we define flag, that seems to me the definition of a flag sign. Any fabric or flexible material attached to or designed to be flown from a flag pole or other similar structure.
That's fine,
That seems to me,
except when does it become a sign?
well, flags essentially are symbols of something.
Yeah, are the flags in this room signs? I
Well,
think that's
let me
the
put it
thing we
this way.
need to define.
I'll tell you, let me put it this way. If I wanted to burn one, yeah, it would be a sign free speech. I could do that. That's what the whole question of the speech issue is. It's a symbol of something. And that's a form of speech.
Oh.
I mean, that's how it's interpreted anyway.
Can we take a step back from that comment? And I think I may have a solution. So if we remove flag sign definition and then simply refer to the new definition for sign, if somebody puts a flag out that's intended to promote sale of products, goods, or services, then we would regulate it as a sign as opposed to a flag.
I think that's the right way to do it. Whether it's a flag or not, if it's advertising this
Then it
business
equals a
or
sign,
product or
whatever it
service,
is.
then it's a sign.
Okay.
Well, I think the reason we defined a flag sign is because it is, a symbol, so, which it's a form of speech, and you want to allow it. We don't want to prohibit.
I think you want to define the flag,
I don't,
and then you want to define a sign.
I think flags, I don't.
And
I
a
think we don't
flag
need to
can be
differentiate.
a sign, but it isn't always a sign.
I think that another.
Isn't that kind of where you're going, Brandy?
Yeah, yep. And I think part of the reason why this is so confounding is because it was in your original code as one of the exemptions. We could just take all references to flags out. We're going to exempt any flag that's not a sign. It's not applicable to the sign code. And then the flags
Well,
that
you're going
are
to exempt the
signs-
ones that don't meet the definition is, I think, how it's worded.
I'm suggesting now that we just take both of those definitions out.
Take them both out because you don't need to define a flag because a flag is exempt.
And then if we define flag sign, then we're being too,
Then you're being more specific than you need to be.
right.
How would you define flag sign? The way it's defined now?
We're gonna potentially take the definition out completely and then just refer to the sign definition. So anything
And
that's
refer what?
to the sign definition.
Okay, so,
So if somebody has a flag on their property that's acting as a sign,
how would you know if it's acting as a sign?
because it's promoting a product, good, or service.
What
do you?
difference does it make if it's promoting, well, I'll just ask that question, if it's promoting a product or it's promoting a point of view?
Right,
What difference does it make from a sign regulation perspective?
yeah, like a political perspective outside of election season.
Right. What difference does that make, again, from our, just from a regulating of a sign that can be a, distraction or something?
I'm
That's
not-
what I'm trying to,
I'm trying to grapple
Understand.
with your question. So if I have a sign that says free pizza on Saturdays, how is that different than a political sign? Is that the question?
or from any other, just a sign expressing a point of view about something, or a flag.
I mean, that fundamentally gets to what can and can't we regulate with sign ordinances?
Yeah, I mean, why would it matter to us why would we regulate it only if it's advertising something? But not, a product versus if it's expressing a view, based upon why we want to regulate in the first place.
Are we talking about flags still specifically?
yeah.
Okay. To be honest, I can't think of any reason why anybody would use a flag to advertise anything, especially if it's outside, and in which case, those are the only ones that we would regulate. It may be a moot point, just because nobody's gonna use a sign, or a flag as a sign, because unless it's windy, it's not gonna be very effective.
I thought there was conversation about those yard signs where they had multiple colorful yard signs, and there was opposition to that, as well as those blow-up.
Oh, yeah, but those are, I'm just only referring to flag. And the only reason I say that is because at some place in here, a sign that we don't allow is prohibited. So I think it makes sense to allow flags.
Of any kind.
Yeah.
In
I guess what I'm trying to figure out is why would you distinguish? Why would you care from a regulation perspective? That's all I'm saying. I mean, I just don't want to prohibit them by eliminating the definition and then not including it anywhere.
Are we limiting how many flags somebody
Well,
can have and the
that's where we'll
size of
get
those
into, like, in the
flags?
district regulations, that's where you get into the size of things
Right,
And the number.
and the numbers and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, we haven't gotten there yet.
correct.
So maybe, just keep that in the back of your mind as we get into the district regulations.
Yeah,
That,
this one's tripping me up, because if you are under the impression that why regulate flags, then in my opinion, why have it in this?
no, mine would be why regulate them differently,
Different.
based upon what they represent. That's all, that's my point. Not why regulate them.
Okay,
I mean, you don't want a 100-foot flag probably out there.
but we're not gonna prevent a 100-foot American flag from going up.
Well, I'm sure we're gonna
Square
have
foot.
limits on size of signage.
But on flags too?
If they're a sign, yeah, and they are.
But if it's not a sign?
If it's not a sign, we're not going to allow them, right?
Well, I mean, that's the whole point. So flag specifically, like an American flag, we had one at Perkins in River Falls that was
Huge.
really, really big. I don't know
Yeah.
how big
Yeah.
it was, but crazy big.
Yeah.
And so that's where that question is, would you want to regulate so you can't have something that's 300 square feet on a flagpole?
Well, I think that's the discussion, yes, I think that's when we get to that section of it, because I think that is another one of those things that might vary. It might, I don't know, might not. By district is what I meant.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and what would happen if they switched it to a Perkins flag instead of
Oh,
an
sure.
American flag? Then,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly,
how
yeah.
do we deal with that?
I mean, I think you want to allow them specifically,
Keep going on food.
but then you just regulate, and you regulate regardless. Oh, anyway.
Okay, so that was basically a clarifying question that we'll put a pin in, correct, until we start talking about districts.
Yeah.
Okay.
What was the other one? Up, up, up. Oh, let me find my other definition here. This gets back to the yard sign and freestanding sign. So a yard sign, the distinction we're making when we use the term yard sign between that and a freestanding sign is that a yard sign is temporary.
I would say,
Is that the distinction?
I would say it's a style of temporary sign, or, style's not the right word, but it's the construction of it is so flimsy that it,
The quality.
yeah, like a freestanding sign, let's see. You could put a more substantial temporary sign that has changeable lettering, that's a more permanent style of a structure, but it can be easily moved.
Like those bingo signs or like. the
Probably.
Very like fluorescent colored.
Or,
Okay, then we also define temporary sign, which is a sign installed for a limited time and not constructed or intended for long-term use.
correct. So a yard sign would be both temporary and a yard sign.
What other kinds of temporary signs are there?
I think there's probably all kinds of temporary signs.
What about,
Those like, they call them like feather flaggy things that you put out for rent right now.
Okay,
That would be one. Yeah,
I-
banners.
Banner of some sort.
Yep. Those stringer things that, advertise.
I'm just trying to understand why. Well, on yard sign, though, on the definition for yard sign, I actually probably would eliminate the second sentence.
Okay, I would agree with that. I think that part of the discussion on the sign definitions may be best to wait until we get into the broader discussion of how we're going to regulate in the districts. And then we can refer back to these and see how they,
Yeah, I was
they
just
work.
trying to clarify, why we just didn't define temporary signs and leave it at that. Why we had to have a specific, because, you could have a temporary window sign.
You
Did
could,
we want to define that?
but you might want to regulate those differently than.
Yeah, maybe. That, I was just, in my mind, just trying to think that through. Why would we want to do that? So,
Sure.
again, once we get into the more specifics.
So, but I'll make a note of striking that second sentence.
Yeah,
Everybody
that just can
that.
confuse things, I think. On the prohibited signs, the first one, advertising or business signs attached to mobile equipment, blah, blah, blah. So if you had a non-advertising sign or non-business sign, you could attach it to mobile equipment, right? This would only apply if it were advertising.
As written, a couple of things are going through my head. First is I believe this came from your current code. And second, to prohibit any sort of message on a mobile equipment.
Sure,
would be
yeah.
Regulating messages.
I agree, which is why I don't think it needs to be, I mean, I would just say signs on or attached to mobile equipment. I wouldn't say advertising or business signs. I
Oh,
would
I
just say
see.
signs,
Okay. I would
because you don't want any signs like that, regardless of their purpose.
Business signs on different areas? Is that what you're talking about?
Well, I mean, I can think of, maybe you just want to put up some message. And if we don't want that type of sign,
Or somebody on Margaret, that Dairy Queen says, I'll give you a free Dairy Queen for a year if you say Dairy Queen 3 blocks this way.
there you go, yeah. Or on some kind of device.
I think it's important to note on
But
that,
again, it's content-based when you're talking about advertising or business. Then you're getting back into content.
but I think what's important is the second half of that
Yes,
first prohibition.
yeah. No, I agree.
where
I
the
would just get
signing
rid of the
is
content.
Is the purpose, right. That protects you from things like logos on the side of trucks, commercial trucks and things like that.
Yeah.
We aren't regulating.
I don't have a problem with prohibiting it. I just don't want it to be specific to the content of the sign.
Yep.
That's what we're trying to get rid of. So, yeah, a lot of this, I'm sure, that this is what was in our code, which is why we need to get it changed.
Sure. So as far as vehicles advertising the business for which having them parked in the lot would be in opposition to this.
No, I mean, if you have, for example, if you advertise your business on your truck, that's not the principal use
Oh, okay.
of the truck.
Or the sign, oh, I see.
And that's what Patrick was getting at. I mean, if that's all you're really, I just parked this here forever, and that's,
Right.
It's like those Las Vegas ones.
yeah,
Yeah, you would.
like your vehicle, for goodness sake.
Clown car.
Okay, so this is a simple clarification that it's basically signs attached to mobile equipment where signing is not the principal
Yeah,
use of the equipment.
That's an important caveat there.
Got it.
So, and I know we haven't, I don't think we have so we're going to prohibit flashing and rotating signs rather than have standards for flashing and rotating, right?
Depends on what the definition of flashing is.
Yeah,
That's a policy question for this body. That was within your existing ordinance, and it seemed like a reasonable prohibition from a planning standpoint. If you'd like to open that up a little bit, we might need to revisit the definitions to tighten up.
I think you need to differentiate between an electronic message center and a flashing sign.
well, that's one of the issues, is the flashing piece.
You can have something rotate and roll, but this type of thing
Yeah.
just is annoying.
See, to me, that's where when we get into the criteria for electronic message board signs, I think that's where you deal with that.
The flashing.
How long is,
How long and how do you
and
change from message to
frequency.
message? Yeah. I think that's where you deal with the flashing. Are there any other, I can't think of, I mean, I understand, but we talk about illumination for
Well,
other
What about
signs.
if you had a neon sign that was flashing?
like an open sign that,
Yeah, is that something that's not allowed?
That is in some communities.
Yeah,
Those open signs need to be static.
yeah. I think what we need to do is define, because an electronic message board is one thing, a neon or a LED sign that flashes would be another thing. I think what we need to do is, if we're talking about a flashing sign, if we define it, then we need to define what flashing means.
Well, we do define flashing sign, but
Right,
but it, says, one that's not a changeable copy sign, but now we're getting rid of the definition of a changeable copy sign, so we just have to tweak that flashing sign definition, I think.
Well, we've got a new changeable copy sign that will go hand in hand with the new electronic message center sign. Because the changeable copy sign definition, as it's now written, is intended to be, doing it by hand.
right, not
Okay.
a lit, electronic changeable,
Right.
but
Right.
Put your letters on changeable, sorry. So then the electronic message center will be compatible with that, and I think a flashing sign should be compatible with both of those definitions, or with the electronic message center definition. That kind of makes sense.
Yes, I agree with that,
Now,
reading the flashing sign definition.
I've got to ask a question about inflatable gorillas.
That's up to you.
Now, that's prohibited because that's out of scope in terms of a sign. It's defined as something else. Is that correct? Or I don't see it prohibited in the prohibited signs.
Let's see.
Along with the wavy guy. Those.
I guess I would like to take the temperature of the room in terms of the inflatable gorilla or any other movable, that's not necessarily a sign, but a device. And if that is desired by this body to prohibit them, then I can go back and figure out how to do that. Because I don't know that I have the answer right.
Yeah, I guess in my gut, it just seems kind of tacky, and I think that's something we're, that in terms of the quality of the community, it's something we're not particularly looking to promote or allow.
What are you specifically talking about?
The giant inflatable gorilla on the roof of the
We ever had
building?
any?
Just the tube man.
Yeah, the tube man,
Here and there.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
seen those.
There would be something like that to be a time limit, like for a grand opening.
Yeah,
Well, I think
a
that's.
temporary sign.
Yeah, maybe we'll talk about that when we get to the temporary.
That's what it seems like, it
Or
falls
do
into
we
the temporary
prohibit those?
category.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
'cause you wouldn't have it
Some
year
allow it as
round.
permanent sign.
You wouldn't have that year round.
Right.
Unless it's a good-looking gorilla.
All right, John, I'll look for your giant gorilla.
but I was really asking about flashing signs because I was wondering if that could be cared for in illumination. Because we do have illumination, or we did, and probably still will have the illumination standards where we get at, how bright they can be and address, and that seemed like a place we could address that rather than just, have a sign called flashing sign.
Right. We do have an illuminated sign.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
That would be cleaner.
That's where
Yeah.
it should fit.
Yeah. I mean, I hate to have any more sign types than we need to have.
Yeah, I think that was the big goal for this ordinance too, was to clean it up and make it much more accessible to the
And
public.
understandable to people.
If the illuminated sign definition is properly categorized, then you don't need to say anything about a flashing sign.
Yeah,
You just need to regulate it properly.
exactly. Yeah, that's where I'm getting at, is if we don't need to create this as a sign type, then let's not do it. Let's address it through other,
Especially if we're not going to allow a flashing sign, then why define a flashing?
exactly,
Build it into the definition of an illuminated
right.
sign.
And to me, that goes for rotating as well. That gets into movement, so that, again, is one of those, potentially you can address that in the standards.
Is that physically moving, or is that
Well, that's what
through,
this
like,
talks
the
about.
visual?
That's how we define it.
Okay.
A sign or portion of a sign, which in any physical part or in total turns about on an axis, rotates, revolves, or is otherwise in motion. Which would be a flag.
Full circle.
I mean, that covers a lot of signs. It's any motion at all. So I think that's just, again, when we get to the actual standards,
Yeah.
then we can, touch back to maybe those two sign types that we've prohibited and see if we really need to even include them as a sign type or define them.
And
Yep, I understand.
Okay,
Just
Elaine?
noodling through this.
can we,
So, and the discussion
Go
of
ahead
standards
and
has
list.
got me moving on from what we have in section B, the general sign regulations B, which is computations. So far we've got area measurements, height, and then setbacks and location. Setback is, from your current ordinance, 10 feet is the minimum, and then from any property line and 5 feet from any driveway. That 5 feet from the parking area might be an addition. So I would consider that potentially a standard. That I don't know. And do we want to keep that setback static across all districts and all sign types? I'm just gonna put that out there for
I think the one exception could be the downtown, where we don't have
right.
setbacks.
But also, you wouldn't have a monument or freestanding in those situations.
Well,
yeah, I would
could.
really favor simplifying.
But you'd have to have it set back 10 feet.
yes, you could, but you could, we have some with setbacks.
You have some,
We don't have any that have freestanding signs
oh, I see.
that I'm aware of. But go ahead, Eric, or Rick.
Yeah, I would really favor simplifying, how many districts have different criteria for, size and setback, and to limit that as much as we can. I think it just makes it a lot easier to understand the ordinance.
Sure. Okay. So what I think I hear you saying is that 10 feet across the board is probably a preferred than trying to differentiate between the
Yeah.
districts.
There
pretty much have
possible
done that.
exception might be downtown.
Right.
Yeah,
That's what
yeah.
I was
Yeah.
going to say, because even downtown setbacks for buildings are even 0.
Right.
Yeah,
So I think we don't want to have that setback apply in the.
right.
But would you want a pylon sign set at the property line or 2 feet from the property line in your downtown?
Trying to think of an example of where that would even occur.
In what we
If the
call the,
buildings are up on, at the property line, then there's no place for a pylon sign.
Right.
So,
it would be pretty hard to do unless they put it in the rear.
I mean, maybe you could say it's a 10-foot setback, except where building setback is 0, or something like that,
Or maybe you just prohibit those sign types and,
because
In your downtown.
that sign, there's no place to put that sign typically, if the building is set up to the,
Not in front of the building.
you can't put it in front because it will be outside the
Well,
property
Right.
you could put it in the parking lot.
You could put it in the parking lot,
parking lot.
yes.
That's true.
And then you'd want it 10 feet from the property line.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I would be opposed to, think of an example, all right, driving east past Love Ice Cream. They have a big white wall right now. The building is 0 setback, essentially. If there was a sign on that white wall very close to the corner, the front corner, I wouldn't object to that.
Right. But it wouldn't be yeah,
And they, in fact, I think they do have a sign on a post, or there's a post there from, I don't know if that post actually has a sign on it. The one in the parking lot? That's just location. I'm
Which sign are
thinking.
you talking about?
I'm thinking about the
You're not
lo-
talking about the property for lease or whatever sign, or for sale sign.
No. Yeah, I'm going to.
I
go
know
look.
Love has the sign up on,
Yeah, yeah,
I want
you know,
to go
in,
look.
I don't know what other sign, maybe this is another one we kind of, put a check mark by, and when we
Play with.
get to the district-specific
yeah,
standards, we can take another
agree.
look at it,
Right.
because,
Can I throw out another one that's also not related to this current discussion, but it's coming up, but it's on my brain because I passed by Newman's Bar tonight. on my
I'm
way-
sorry?
I passed by Newman's Bar on my way in, and also we had a sign permit a week or two ago that was dealing with window measurements. And I think you have a limitation on 20% of the window area can be covered with signage, and Newman's has every window has a neon beer sign in it.
Did you notice Paperback Plus?
I did not.
And
So I guess, and
wonder about the pawn shop too.
to my eye, the neon beer signs in the window is kind of quaint. And I don't know that we would want to necessarily say no to that, but that's a discussion for this group.
Mm-hmm, yeah, yeah.
I think that's kind of the character, of Newman, so it's kind of like definitely a balancing act. One thing about the setbacks too, I just want us to be mindful too of smaller lots. Some people have small lots and a 10-foot setback might be really far back, so just.
Okay, I'll make a note of that to
And I think we've,
discuss.
at least for residential purposes, we're pretty good with that, but when you get into some of the business ones, it becomes potentially more of an issue. Let me just point out, though, that under the general regulations, A4 has setback standards for freestanding signs, and then B3 has setbacks as well. We don't need it in both places, so I think it probably doesn't need to be under the computations paragraph. I think leaving it under the general regulations makes sense.
Oh,
We don't need to duplicate.
I agree. That's a error. I would suggest, though, from an administration point of view, I would not think to look under general regulations necessarily for setbacks.
Why would we have it under computations?
Because it's a dimensional thing.
Not of the sign.
No, that's true.
I mean, we have setbacks in location, which to me, you put under your general regulations because they apply to all signs.
Just a note, Love's is on the roof.
Yeah,
of the building.
yeah.
What is it?
There is an old signpost out by the parking lot, but it's almost invisible.
Big one on the roof that says
Yeah.
Love's.
Yeah, there's no sign on it.
Yeah, I can't think of any sign that's close to the,
For roof signs?
yeah, we don't allow them,
So-
but
So do you put the setback under the general requirements or under the computations? That's,
well, and location.
and the location
I mean,
requirement.
that seems to me to belong under the general regulations, not under the sign computation, sign height, sign area. That's computations.
Yeah, those could be moved.
Mhm.
I mean, if I were looking through this for any regulations, as somebody interested in a sign, I wouldn't look, I'd probably read the computation, sign area, sign height, and that I'd stop and think, well, I'm not worried about that piece.
I do have some comments at some point here too, Elaine.
Good.
So, no?
Yeah.
Okay. Not to be discouraging, going back to the beginning,
Going back to what?
the beginning of the section.
Oh, the beginning, okay.
Let's see, well, not exactly the beginning. I don't think so, okay. Page, oh, that got covered, sorry. Page 155 of 170.
And what's on that page?
It is Chapter 157, Sign Ordinance, the
Oh,
first
okay.
page of that.
Okay,
And under A4, I think it's just a typo. Towards the end, it's regulations set for herein. It should be fourth.
right.
And what happened, this is a little more substantial, under B, what happens if it's a local election? If it's not a state election, how do we protect free speech in that situation? So we might have a school board or a city, most of the city elections are with the state elections anyway, but
But if you
You know,
have
that-
a vacancy
that'd
or
be a
something, you have a
possible
special. Well, no, the
election.
state covers special elections.
Uh-huh. But it
I
could
don't
be
know if it's only
locals.
state special elections, now that I think about that.
Mm-hmm. I think we just want to cover it, whether or not that
Well-
situation exists now or not, but it ought to be, somehow
Yeah.
we ought to be covering local elections. You know, it doesn't fit into that category of, 46 days before the
Right.
primary part of it, but,
Question.
somehow we need to accommodate that.
So when you say accommodate, you mean you want to allow or limit the time that local signs can be placed?
I think we want to allow it, but for a specific period of time in some way. So we would be,
Would you want to match what state statutes has for?
it'd be great if we could just add state or local, but I don't know that that works because,
Because we're
There aren't-
actually
there
using
aren't-
the state language.
there aren't primary associated with, that kind of a election.
We could modify the sentence somehow to include local signage also
Yeah.
would apply to the
Mhm.
state requirements.
Mhm. And it might be just that if it's a standalone local election, then it's 46 days before that election, and, it's left at that, and 10 days after, and at least we've accommodated it.
A local city election,
A local city election,
rather
or
than
school,
school
or
board
school
too?
board election, yeah.
I think that's, I can't think of any other.
I think local is broad enough of a term to kind of get that across.
Mhm. Okay. On the next page, in the middle, under bench sign, I don't think we need the last phrase on there, while waiting at a bus stop. I'm thinking about the possibility of other things besides a bus stop, that a bench might exist with a sign.
Like if we
And-
put them in for people to sit on, just
Yeah,
because.
yeah, right.
Well, and we have
Or,
them.
or.
We have a lot of benches downtown that aren't.
Yeah. Or in
Bus stop
memorial,
benches.
Have signs on
in
them?
memorial one, that's got a short memorial for somebody.
Well,
Yeah, I think just-
Memorial sign,
Yeah.
No, it's actually,
Drop the last portion. I agree with you. I wondered
Yeah.
about that.
Uh-huh.
but it's literally, what would you call it, the signs where the names are,
Engraved? Or-
Yeah,
they're not even engraved, I've seen it
they're
where,
kind of etched or,
no, the
which ones are,
metal
you're
is
talking about the
actually-
ones on Seventh, right?
Yeah, isn't the metal actually non-existing, so it's like,
I'm thinking of the wood ones.
Well, I guess my question would be, do you actually have some of these bench signs that are of a non-memorial nature?
Do you
Yeah.
count the Rotary Bench?
Yeah, there's a good example.
Well, Rotary's a good example.
There, you got a bench that says Rotary on it.
Well, and we have them downtown with people's names on them. You could buy, pay for one.
yeah, those are the memorial benches.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So again, but it gets back to, who cares whether it's memorial, whether I paid for it, or whether, it's something else?
Well, I'm
Does it
going,
matter?
I'm going to
From a
the mindset of if it's not a sign, really, do we need to clutter up your ordinance? with-
Yeah, maybe what we need to do is define bench sign differently. It's attached to a bench. I mean, maybe attached is the key word here.
Painted on, I mean, it could be done any number of ways.
Let's go back to the point of this one. So this is in your current ordinance. It's specific to bus stop, bus benches.
Right.
And then I believe somewhere in here, it refers to, where did it go? Maybe I changed it. It had language in the current code about the city has given permission.
Yes, I remember that.
Explicitly.
Was that because,
I'm gonna look it up.
did that prohibit bench signs except for ones where the city had I remember reading that, but it's not in here, so
Let me
Yeah, not in the
pull it up here.
I can't remember exactly what it said.
Yeah.
I'll stop sharing and you can share then, Brandy.
Holy crap.
Oh, here we go. Are they permitted or are they exempt?
Maybe that was one that didn't need a permit.
Oh, here.
Yeah, here it is.
Signs installed and maintained on bus benches and/or shelters within the city right-of-way pursuant to a franchise authorized by the city council.
And what I mean, what was that under?
Exempt signs.
Yeah,
Here, I'll
okay,
share my screen.
Okay. But, I mean, I still think the question is valid, is
Sandberg,
do we just not want other people putting signs on benches, is I guess what we're saying.
Here's my thought behind that. If we were to just take this out of the ordinance, you're not permitting, at least I don't think you are, any off-premises signs. So all of your benches are pretty much gonna be.
Right.
That you're concerned with or on the
Right.
sidewalk in the public right-of-way. So I don't even know that we need to worry about it.
I don't think so either. Plus, you can't affix signs to public property, so, you know, if they're city benches on public property,
We don't say anything about benches because we consider a bench a sign that requires a permit if it's in the right-of-way.
a bench wouldn't be no. A bench
it's
wouldn't be a
public.
sign.
If a bench is in the right-of-way,
No, a bench with a sign on it.
well, it wouldn't be, you wouldn't have any unless you have, I'm sorry, do you have them now?
Yes. I
It's
mean,
a-
but not the kind,
Yeah.
I think that you're thinking of. We've got, like, say, some with people's names memorialized
I wouldn't
on
call
them.
that a
Well, there's a
sign.
Sandberg
But-
one.
yeah, the Sandberg mortuary.
The Sandberg,
Is that
Sandberg
Yeah.
Mortuary, yeah,
so that's advertising. Is that
yes.
a bus bench? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, it is.
I
I think so.
So does
that
that
a
fit
bus?
into
Oh, it
this
probably is,
Yeah.
franchise business?
yeah.
Okay, maybe we just leave it for now.
If we leave it, then we we should leave that exemption in
The
too then.
franchise authorized by the city council? Yes.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't you think?
That seems just so specific and strange. I guess I don't really fully understand what. So does that mean that
Maybe we
Your
should be
funeral
more
home is
specific
coming to
on
the
a
city
bench
council
sign
to
and
ask
say
for
in-
permission?
Include the
That's what
authorization.
happened?
I'm sure.
Okay. Okay, well, yes.
Sorry, what happened?
What,
Sandberg came to city council and asked for permission?
probably.
Probably.
I
Alrighty.
don't know that there's a process to do it.
Maybe when he was mayor for 38 years, he passed that.
Probably got it, just did it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, well, let's go back to how it was. And then
Okay.
if we need to change it again.
Anything else, Rick?
Yeah, something on political signs. How are we handling things like, all are welcome here, or Black Lives Matter, or, signs along that line?
You're not doing anything with them.
Pardon?
It would just be allowed, it's free speech signage that's not,
Free speech sign, and so they're not considered political.
well,
So they're not
They're not related
subject to
to a
that
candidate.
limitation.
Is that
I don't know.
what you would say?
it could be political, it could be not political. It's just, I wouldn't regulate it any different than you would like a Happy Holidays.
It's not a
Flag.
campaign sign.
It's not a campaign
I
sign.
think maybe that's the political that you're thinking about, is that
Okay.
the exemption that we have in here is for political
Political
signs.
signs.
They're essentially, they're
specifically-
campaign signs.
For addressing an issue or addressing a...
Yeah, I think a campaign sign is the one that falls in the 46-day
Okay.
deal. 46 and 10, that rule.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And
All non-commercial signage.
the other ones you're talking about are not campaign signs.
But
the
aren't we
free
going to get
speech
rid of political sign as a sign type? Since they're temporary.
I think that question, I don't know for sure. I don't know the answer to that one right now until it
Okay.
sifts through.
Where's that?
Because that's I mean, I understand what you're saying. Politics is in the eye of the beholder. That's,
Where's
the
the
gray area
exception?
you wanna
Where's that
stay out of.
46-day exception that you
That
were?
was under
Protect everyone's free
the
speech.
very first couple of paragraphs, under B.
Does it refer to those as political signs?
no, it allows all non-commercial signs of any size, blah, blah.
Okay, okay.
So no, it doesn't use the word political
Okay.
or campaign.
So they're, the, all are welcomed here would be a yard sign that
Yeah,
somebody
just
would
a
have,
yard
and we
sign.
would be regulating that based on how many or the size.
Although I should go back.
And no,
No,
No
and that,
time
I was going to say on the yard sign in particular, because it's a temporary sign, we should have some idea of what we mean by temporary.
yeah, I kind of even wonder if temporary ought to be in there. Because, many of those kinds of statements are up for years and years.
Yep.
People leave them up, and
Yep.
they may not be very durable, but they do last.
Yeah,
And, and
and they're more durable
you've gotta be
sometimes than you might
realistic
think.
about it, and
Yep.
people want to express their opinion.
Yeah. But when you're that specific, that this is temporary, then I think you should have some kind of guidelines around that. Otherwise, it's just a sign. It's just a freestanding sign that will be there for the next 10 years.
Yes.
I mean, temporary, to me, we do, have some very specific temporary guidelines, like for certain things, this many days, that many days, even the,
And there could be
You know-
somebody else's free speech, they could put something up with that.
Yeah.
Really, that really could cause issues. And
Yeah.
it's like, how do you get rid of that but not get rid of the other ones?
Right.
If there's
Yeah.
a certain time frame on it.
so I just think we have to be able to enforce that if it ever
We
becomes.
wouldn't
an
want to
issue.
enforce it.
Yeah.
But then we get to the yard signs are listed as exempt from the sign code. And
Mhm.
so I think the intent there was that you didn't want to force people to come and get a
Permit?
permit for garage sale signs.
Yep.
And we would call the all are welcome signs a yard sign probably as well. Therefore, if we extract that from the exemptions and strike it from the definition, then what?
Oh, I'm not saying strike it or exempt, well, we do exempt it. We exempt temporary signs.
Well, do you?
Well, we haven't gotten that piece. I thought we did, but let me go back to find the.
I guess I don't know if you do right now or not. But I would imagine that you probably have some requirements for some temporary signs like banners.
Maybe, yard signs is listed as exempt from the permit.
Right.
Yep, and that was probably meant for garage sales and those kinds of, like, real easy signs.
I know, but there are other kinds of yard signs is really the,
I would just be careful of over-regulating too, because of
Sure,
needing to also do the compliance piece. We want to be able to enforce it, and that's, I think, really critical.
I agree with that. I think that pulling in some of the old definitions and the sign code that you have now is fairly typical of everybody else's sign code, which basically regulates or defines every possible sign type under the sun. And if we scale it far, far back and get down to brass tacks in terms of what do we really care about in our community, primarily
Recording in progress.
those signs that are permanent, that are going to be business signs, you know, the ones that are attached to buildings and the windows on the property, not the transient type stuff. Unless I'm wrong, unless there's a problem in this community that needs to be addressed, and sometimes there are certain things that, the inflatable gorilla, for example, that we need to talk about or make provisions for. But if the direction in general is to try to scale it down to those brass tacks, that might make this a whole lot easier for everybody.
I like easier,
yeah.
Brandy.
But then
You
I
can
don't
do
know.
that. You've earned your salary if you can do that. Make it easier.
I think what we're, where cities have gotten into trouble is when, somebody just puts up 50 signs in their yard. Just more for annoyance than anything else. The city goes after them, and then they all go to court, and the city loses because of the way they've worded their regulations. And that's really the key thing here. So to me, again, this is where knowing how we're going to regulate and what we're going to allow, we're getting to that point, but it's hard to have some of these discussions until we've got something to look at and say,
Sure.
okay, well, then if we do this, then that means this. Let's go see if that makes sense from the way we've defined things. Because that's one reason I don't like a lot of sign types being defined. It gets so confusing, and then you've got so many regulations for every single kind of little sign you've defined.
Yes.
So when it comes to the yard sign piece, I think we need to get there. To me, they're just a temporary sign. They're a freestanding sign. Whether they're temporary or not, to me, is irrelevant, quite honestly. If we've got a standard that says you can have this much signage in your yard, whatever that might be, 40 square feet or something, whatever it is. And that's where I'm just kind of waiting to get there to see where we think we really want to get to as far as how much is too much. Because I think that's what it boils down to. How much would be too much?
Right, and is what you have now okay?
What you have now is too little.
No, I mean, the signs on the street.
Oh, on the street, yeah, I'm talking more about neighborhoods, because that's usually where this comes about, is in residential areas where somebody, puts up just tons of signs in their yard.
Yeah, I guess what is the trade-off there too? If one person has a bunch of signs, we're regulating it simply for aesthetics.
Well, some try to do that, but others, it's just so many that they're a distraction, just on the public safety element of it. Big signs, just overdoing it. And that again, just gets down to just making a decision as a city on how much would be too much, what don't we want? And that is where it gets into, you don't want to block sight lines, and you keep it to the basics.
I think aesthetics is a valid reason to regulate.
Pardon me?
I think aesthetics
Oh,
is
yeah,
is
yeah, I'm not
valid
saying
as
it's
well.
not.
Okay.
Yeah.
It is.
It's in the eye of the
Too
beholder.
subjective.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it is.
Yeah,
it is
yeah.
difficult.
Well, and that's why we
Public
want to put a
safety-
number on it.
Yeah, public
on a
safety
side.
is something you could do making an argument about it's a distraction to drivers or something
Yeah.
like that. You could probably make those kinds of
You
arguments.
can make those much easier. But then again, if you're getting into aesthetics, that can get into just the size of a sign, that would be permanently in someone's
Yeah.
space. That could be an aesthetic issue. So there are some aesthetic pieces, and that is one of our purpose. I mean, we don't, you want a pleasant-looking atmosphere, streetscape. So anyway, I mean,
You're giving me a new way of thinking about this, because usually in residential cases, you want to under-regulate. But I think what I'm hearing you say is that you can have whatever you want as long as it's not going to exceed X many or X size. Whatever it is.
Right.
I mean, that's kind of how I approach it.
I like it. It's a new way for me to think about things, so
Really?
what?
That's kind of surprising. Well, I wouldn't think that would be a new way.
So it's typical to
Well-
under-regulate and just not really regulate it. It's,
I don't know, it's different than how all the sign ordinances that I've seen.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And
I don't think a lot of cities have looked at their sign ordinances very carefully. I think that's one that kind of flies under the radar until it comes and hits
People-
you.
cities do not want to touch sign regulations because they're so politically volatile, because you're going to make so many people angry.
yeah, there's litigation
Yeah.
risks to it, and that's, yeah.
That's why I think you don't try to do any more than you need to.
Yeah, no, I like the approach. So,
Okay, so, Patrick, did you have, or
I
Rick?
think Rick was still going, wasn't he?
Oh, I'm sorry,
Oh,
Rick.
I'm done.
Oh, okay.
I just have one minor thing, under page 160 of the packet, under B exemptions. This is under the permits, exemptions, prohibitions, just a minor thing, where we include on item 13 statues. I think maybe sculptures gets added to that. Statues/sculptures, because they would be defined differently, but I think they should both be exempt.
They may require a building permit, but they don't require
True.
a sign permit.
True.
part of this line of thinking that is coming to me now that you brought up the radical idea of of regulating in residential districts. Perhaps we don't need the exemptions list, because that part of the reason that we have so many things defined is because of this. And instead, if we just simply said in your permitting section, these are the sign types that require permits.
And take the exemptions out.
Maybe, I don't know. I don't know if it's gonna
You
work or
could.
not.
Yeah. When we get to the districts piece of it, or the actual, making that distinction, we have to go back and look at that. That's a possibility.
Good way to think of it is that these are the signs that are regulated. End of story.
Yeah,
So you can do anything else. That is a very different way to.
And we
look
just
at
have to think about what could somebody do and say it's a sign.
it. What could they do that we
Or
don't want them
not
to
a
do?
sign.
somebody's gonna do it, whatever it is.
Oh, yeah, there's no question.
And then the neighbor is going to complain.
But if you looked at the residential thing, and we don't care what you put on your sign, but we do care if it's any bigger than 100 square feet total.
Sure.
You could have 12 little signs or one big sign, but it can't be any more than this amount of area. And then you have the safety issues too,
Right.
that you can address.
And that's where actually the setback.
And that's as much regulation as you would want to do for a residential
Yeah.
free speech, allowing the free speech, but, just a little bit of control so that people don't go crazy. And I don't think we have anybody in North St. Paul that's doing something like that.
I'm not aware of anyone, but.
I've never seen
usually when it happens is when you know.
Yeah.
Oh, rats.
Yeah,
But yeah, I just think that seems more sensible, particularly in residential areas. Because we only are going to allow a certain type of sign. We're certainly not going to have pylon signs for residential uses probably, and that kind of billboards and all that, so.
You don't want one in your yard?
I don't want one in my neighbor's yard.
And think
Or
about,
mine, I'd love it.
think about how in the residential district, how we, or if we regulate signs for a home-based business, a daycare thing, or a, some sort of home-based business, something you're doing in your home.
That again
We don't regulate it, or do we?
That
I'm
again
just
gets
asking.
to, if it's in a residential district, then you have the question of, does it matter
Mhm.
Well,
if it's a business or not?
that might be the kind of sign that you would have to pull a permit for.
Mhm.
In which case, then it would follow the rules in the future table that we're gonna create.
Yeah, there's a 15th and McKnight, that little daycare, they changed the whole house into that daycare center over the
Mhm.
Yeah.
sign out front.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Within your home occupation regulations in the zoning ordinance, it does have a provision about how signs,
Mm.
how much they can have,
Yeah.
size or whatever. So we'll have to
Yeah, that will have to be
adjust that.
addressed. I thought about that, because I think we only allow like a nameplate or a wall sign or something.
I don't remember, but it's.
I don't remember
I
either.
remember that it's there.
It's not too big,
Yeah,
little sign in front yard.
yeah. Again, probably not something you normally think of as a yard sign, but, because it's not temporary.
Mhm.
Anything else? Before she goes back? Now moves on to the district regulations
Yeah, that's.
and
gonna be-
temporary signs.
That's gonna be fun.
Ugh. Keep that temporary one simpler than it is now. Anybody else have anything on the sign piece? Again, if we think of anything else, we can always shoot an email between now and the next meeting, correct?
Absolutely, yep.
Thanks. It's a tough one. It's a complicated one.
These sign ordinances, I gotta say, they're not my favorite.
Thank you for spending time on it, though.
Yes. Okay, then we'll
Good.
move into the downtown patio furniture design thing and the funding for downtown improvements and the added material we got on parklets and I think it was just furniture. Seating.
Yes, so originally, I think there was the idea that the city was going to purchase and maintain furniture downtown, but that's not the case. If in fact, a business would like to have furniture out in front of their business, they will be purchasing it and maintaining it on their own. So it's up to the planning commission to define the design style for those areas. So I just put a couple of, or a comment here, review the outdoor seating and streetscape elements, a materials platelet to determine and define the style, design style standards, including architectural character, color, and the product material. So those are the things that we'll be looking for.
So
Here's your chance. Here's your chance.
who's assembling the options?
Pardon?
Oh, do you
Who's
want,
assembling the options to look at?
you want me to find some options?
Well,
Well,
I'm wondering if that isn't appropriate for Candace to do. As an
Who?
example. For Candace to do something like that, or somebody at
Oh.
WSB? Because it's essentially a landscape architecture kind of a thing.
Sure.
it is, yeah. And I can ask her to do that. I'll have to talk to Dan about budgeting.
Yeah.
That will require.
I mean, maybe she could serve as an assistant or something like
Yeah.
that. But we don't want this to,
Well, my thought is,
A lot.
she probably has sources.
I-
And could come up with some ideas
well,
without a lot of effort.
information that was added this afternoon to the packet on the
This-
seating stuff, that Lisa's information. I recall seeing they had some
there are design standards and safety standards depending on, you know, how they're done. But yeah, just distance from the road, distance from cars, what kind of signage or you know, safety zones you need, if it is closer to the road, or it extends out.
I do agree with Patrick in that I think this is a project that involves more than just picking color and material. I think we can reference the design manual, even though it's fairly old. I think those standards were kind of identified way back when, and we want to keep the consistency. So there's standards here, there's guidelines. I don't think that this is something that you guys will be deciding or picking or choosing tonight. I think it's for further discussion. But based on some of this information, we can at least give direction. And then candidates, if there's money in the budget, could put together the illustration boards, if you will, or some kind of a pamphlet or brochure or whatever that defines these. But there was quite a bit of information in the downtown design manual that was created quite a while ago, in addition to what Lisa forwarded today. I don't know if anyone, I know Elaine saw that, but there was more information that Lisa provided on parklets.
And something else, which really was more just like sidewalk-type seating.
Yes.
And it had a couple photos of choices that businesses had made, because I think they were given some options. I just had a chance to read it quickly, and that would guide them, and this is what you kind of have to choose from. So it didn't all have to be identical.
Yeah,
And
I think there's real value in that.
Yeah, I don't want to fall in the trap of everybody has to do exactly the same thing.
Right. Well, not only that, but I don't know that 10 years from now, the same product would even be available.
Yeah.
So I think that's why we need to keep it open.
Yeah,
Previously, the survey chose antique style. I know you
Right.
can't see it very well, but, you know, as long as we define what those style guidelines are, that will be the main goal for.
I mean, I think
setting-
typically that would indicate metal of some kind.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
which at least to me makes sense anyway, because that's a little more wind resistant.
Yes, yes. And I know Terry Ferdlong had indicated we don't want the plastic weight furniture from Menards, you know, so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, he was pretty.
yeah, I mean, I don't think it has to be too detailed.
Real ornate, it could be very simplified.
Yeah, well, especially if the businesses need to purchase it.
Yeah,
You know, they don't have all that much
Yeah.
money, and this is something we really want to encourage. Um, Yeah, so I
For
don't
the
want to make
street
it,
cafe piece,
pardon me?
for like the on sidewalk
Yeah,
pieces.
yeah. I mean, I think that people love that.
Right,
And it was nice to actually see when you came downtown.
right, yeah, and that's why I was thinking of parklets too, because it's an additional extension.
Yeah,
And I've seen it used for the restaurants as well, not just for seating normally, but restaurants will make it available as a place to eat, and that expands their opportunity
Yeah.
to generate income.
yeah,
So, but I think there would be some zoning around that. If there is alcohol going onto the sidewalk, then you know you have to look at those permits and licensures.
yeah. Well, that's what, like, the Newmans and company have had to do in the past when they've created their patios in the rear, is they need to, you know, expand their business, so to speak.
Yep.
You know, their serving area, and that
Yeah.
has to do with the liquor
Yep.
license. But for just the restaurant piece, if they're not doing liquor, I mean, if they're doing liquor, that's a whole nother issue to some degree. A process for them to follow.
Sure.
But for just the food piece of it, if that's all they're doing, then that's probably could be simplified. I would think.
Yeah, I know the information that you forwarded today did have some very valid points along those lines as far as just the, I'm having a brain freeze here. But no, I agree with you, Elaine. Trying to find out where that was. Let's take some time and review that information. I know it went out today, so we probably didn't have a lot of time to review that.
Yeah,
But we can look at that, and then in our next meeting, circle back. I can talk to Dan and find out if this is a project that WSB can help out with and put the plan together. Maybe we could just get some ideas of what the standards, try to narrow down some of the standards that we want to pass on to Candace. And then she can take it from there.
yeah, and I mean, I just don't want it to turn into a big, complicated plan of some kind. I really like the idea of making it simple. And I thought truly, for us, it kind of boils down to, here are the options, potentially, but then having a few standards around the access piece of it. Keeping the sidewalk open this far from the curb, blah, 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 that kind of thing. To me, it's almost like a handout type of thing. I really don't want to spend a whole
Have a
lot of
whole book on it.
effort on.
Sure.
Can I interject here?
Sure,
In terms of simplicity, instead of coming up with a variety of options, I guess, for restaurants to pick from in terms of design, it might be simpler to just say, we don't want X, Y, Z. These plastic chairs are prohibited and whatever else. And that way it would keep it open for,
Yeah.
flexibility for those
yeah,
businesses to choose what they want. And as far as standards go, your downtown design, oh, I'm sorry. Your design guidelines book does have standards in it right now.
Right, so are those going to be enforced?
well, I would have to really read through those. I haven't looked at that stuff for a long
I
time,
think
but
that needs to be revisited as well.
I think it is
Yeah.
old. I think it probably does need to be, I think at some point, it was started to be looked at again, but then change of staff occurred and it kind of got lost in the shuffle, I
You're
believe,
Correct.
like a lot of other plans. So it's past due, I'm sure.
Especially with all the redevelopment and,
Yeah.
it would be a great time.
Yeah. And it's still, we've got the downtown revitalization plan, which I think is potentially a good guide as well, as far as what we want to accomplish. And if that means we have to, get away a little bit from what might be in the downtown guide, then maybe that's what we need to do, pending, understanding it needs to be revisited anyway.
Sure. What was the other plan that Robert wanted to have us reevaluate?
Living Streets Plan?
Is that the one? Okay.
No, actually,
Living
Your park.
streets.
or not your park, your bike and ped plan?
Our transportation plan?
No.
Or bike and ped?
We don't
I
have
think
a,
that was Living Streets.
but that's the only plan that has anything
was a
to do with sidewalks and stuff.
Mhm.
Whatever plan has the sidewalk recommendation.
Why would we revisit that?
He was trying to connect like with the more of the apartment buildings that are new and stuff like that to make sure people can get into accessible. I think they already ripped up 7th over there where it was anyways.
Well, that's, yeah,
I know sometime they're talking about a roundabout where all 5 come together.
yeah,
Don't know if that's still on the docket,
oh, yeah.
so kind of.
The living streets really did have to do with the design of the streets and the pedestrian and bicycle piece of it. Again,
Or access.
one that primarily has sat on the shelf.
They came right up to where they put that roundabout in over there with the 5-way intersection.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
don't know, somebody said that's still on the docket maybe.
yeah.
There's still discussion about it, yeah.
I think
Oh,
that,
no, I was just curious because I was trying to think of what potentially would you change in it. I can't think of anything.
that's a good document as it
Yeah.
stands. I think what, it may seem like it sits on the shelf because it's one of those types of projects that really requires major infrastructure improvements to trigger that to be put into place. So that just doesn't happen that often. I'm sure it came into play when you did your Seventh Avenue upgrades.
Well, it's really, there also has to be a commitment. The thing that hasn't occurred has been the sidewalk piece. That's what hasn't occurred, other than downtown.
Well, and also they were talking about McKnight, the roundabout, but they already added a new light now.
Yeah,
where the new street is, so
exactly.
the roundabout's kind of done now,
Yeah,
so we're just gonna have to stick with the lights.
yeah. But the Living Streets was primarily geared to residential streets.
I think it had all
I
categories.
mean, it had some downtown, but that was,
Well, it categorized the different streets by, sorry, my brain is not working at this hour. You've got your collector, arterial, local streets. So it had like
Yeah.
identified which routes were going to be most
Yeah.
appropriate for the kinds of facilities.
but generally, when it has come up, it's been through our street projects. That's what I'm
I would
saying.
imagine so.
And that's where, it hasn't necessarily been followed through on because of objections by some people who live on the streets and don't want a sidewalk. And that's been the real struggle. It's always been a struggle. No, I was just curious. I mean, I don't have a
Sidewalks
problem
are-
looking at it again. I was just trying to think, what would you change about that? It's
I know when I
pretty,
moved to Helen, they were talking about a street in '96, when I bought there, they're gonna put a sidewalk
yeah,
on the west side of Helen, but nobody wanted it.
yeah, I know. Like, they're gonna live there forever. Nobody else would ever move in and be happy to have a sidewalk or use it.
Of course, one nice thing
I-
too with that one by the park now, they take care of it all the way up to Joy Road, so whoever
Yeah.
lives there, they don't have to do it.
Yeah, I think that's a point of contention with some people, though.
Could be.
Yeah.
And I think it's hard for people, when why should I have to
Yes.
clean this, blah, blah, blah. But,
Within our plans, and I think overall, council is interested in having more sidewalks, I'd say across the board, majority.
well, it's certainly, like I go back to the comp plan, it's all over the comp plan, it's all over our goals, connect these things.
The
It's what
community
people want.
cafes are,
I mean,
yeah,
that's
it's
the
all
input
sidewalks.
we got
yeah.
at community cafes.
Mhm.
We need these things, you need to put these in and connect them where they're missing pieces.
Especially the connection.
Anyway. Okay, so on that, so was the funding for downtown improvements,
That was brought up at our last meeting. Someone questioned the landscaping. And I had mentioned that the money was taken out of the budget, and that's why it didn't happen
oh,
in 2021. I talked to Dan, our finance director, and he did say that there is money allocated in the 2022 CIP plan. There's actually $142,499. So there's a good chunk of money there.
so that's to fill in where right now all we have is the
Mulch,
mulch.
yeah.
Okay,
And I'm sure there are other things that money will go to.
okay,
But yes, there will be plants downtown. I'm not sure
okay.
who executes that plan, but there's money there. That
Yep.
much I do know.
Maybe that was the green team, or
I heard they were disbanded, though.
we will find more green team.
We
members.
need the Environmental Advisory Commission back.
Yeah,
So,
that would be nice.
so are we gonna maybe spend some time ourselves reading through the whole packet that we got, including the downtown design thing, and then the additional information Lisa sent, and then we can get any comments to you maybe within the next week or so
Sure,
in preparation for our February
yep.
discussion? Because I didn't really have time to go through what
That's
the
totally
latest
fair.
one, and I thought that was very intriguing. What, was that St.
Yes.
Paul? Or
St.
Minneapolis?
Paul does it, Minneapolis.
I can't remember who's information you
It
sent?
came from
Minneapolis.
Minneapolis.
Okay,
When was that sent out?
It was later in the
Today.
afternoon.
It was this
I sent it
afternoon.
late to Lisa, so.
I just happened to log into my email and had the email and thought, oh, okay,
Yeah, no, there's really good information. I was happy.
it's very good.
that
And
it-
they had sample applications too, particularly
Yes.
just for like for the
Yes.
sidewalk dining, and I thought, there you go.
And that's really the city's involvement with it, is just permitting it, which
Right.
I know was one of the discussions, just as far as who's gonna maintain it, where do you store it, who's gonna pay for it if something gets broke. So yeah, that will be up to the business owners.
Yeah,
Sent out
okay.
by you today?
Yes, a revised packet is what it was.
Yeah. About 2-something this afternoon, does that sound about right? Or is that when I
No,
logged
I
on?
I
can't
took an
remember.
extended lunch, so it wasn't at 2.
Oh, okay.
It was
So that comes from
sometime today,
It was today.
yeah.
Yeah,
Civic clerk.
I do like the page where it's the, it shows the applicant's role and the city's role.
Yeah.
I think that's very clearly stated for the
Yeah.
public. I also like the timeline too. It gives you all some time to prepare. And in terms of permits, like we're doing really well in our permitting area in terms of making money.
Oh, we're busy, we're very
Mhm.
busy,
So this is gonna add to it.
yes.
It's great.
Okay, excellent. So we'll all read through that and give you any, like I say, initial comments, so we're better prepared.
Sure.
For
That
next
sounds
month?
good. Yep, that's exactly what I was hoping for.
Okay. So we met expectations on that one, huh?
You sure did.
Okay, anything else from staff? Any other reports?
The only other thing that I wanted to report on was, and I already mentioned, John Stark started on Monday, and it's wonderful to have him here. He's got a very strong background, well-liked by everyone that has met him so far. Actually, the word on the street that if you can't get along with John, then you've got a problem. Yes. So just wanted to let you know that we welcome him with open arms and are happy to have
Excellent.
him in place.
That will be great help to all of you, I'm sure.
Yes, I cannot even tell you.
Okay. On to reports from council liaison.
Oh, okay. Let's see.
It's okay if you don't have any big reports.
I'm trying to think. It's the holiday brain still, trying
Yeah, I
to.
know.
Uh,
Actually, nothing much happens at the end and beginning of the year.
I don't know.
That's okay.
Come back to me. Yeah, I don't know. I
It's
think,
the redevelopment master plan. We
yeah, the
talked about
redevelopment master plan.
quite a bit about that already.
And then the other piece would be, oh, I had something. Come back to me. It'll
Okay.
come.
Okay. Reports from commissioners. Rick, you have anything?
Yeah, I'm just looking up the date. 7th of February is the Silver Lake Improvement Association annual meeting, 6:30, and it'll be a Zoom meeting.
Oh,
So if people are interested, they're
okay.
welcome to join in on that.
Do they put out a notice on the
We-
website where you
we got
know
a-
what the
we
number
got an
is?
email, let's see, I believe it'll also be on the website,
Oh, okay,
as well as on the email list,
okay.
push list.
Okay, February 7th.
Okay, yep.
Okay.
So may I ask, the Silver Lake Improvement Association has their own website?
I think it may be, well, it is a SLIA website, but I think it's hosted through the North St. Paul website,
Okay,
okay?
thank you.
John?
We kind of discussed what we were talking about at the last meeting with the development, so we're working on that plan as the buildings and try to make people that are, sometimes some of the contention people had was like Shifsky, they should future, proposed site for, so people were a little offended that, that, okay, now,
Yeah.
I'm not planning on leaving, but,
Right.
so, trying to make sure that we make everybody inclusive for everybody, that we appreciate the businesses that have been there and have, been very supportive in the foundation for North St. Paul, but still understanding what spots were good to be redeveloped.
When the opportunity comes up.
Yes.
I think that's always the big issue, is to
Yes.
keep that in mind.
Yeah, there's some
Sooner or
bigger
later,
spots, like, Burwell, right behind the bistro, they have a big spot that they really don't have a physical building, but they do all their storage, but they're using that. It's not really up for sale, but it's one of those things where we're trying to be mindful of what's out there without offending people that have it.
right, right,
So that's kind of, I think, the best way to put it.
yeah. Walking the line.
Yep.
Patrick? Okay, I'm coming back to you.
All right, I think there was some discussion about 36 and 120. So there was a meeting with MnDOT and some of the mayors and some of the elected officials in regards to the development and some of the reports too, that the survey results and what people wanted. A lot of the discussion was around sidewalks and bike lanes and stuff, but I'm not sure. I think Morgan had said that 36 and 120, all of the cities agree that there needs to be something there, but within time, I think it's going to take a little bit of time. But they are looking at exploring the infrastructure funding that's coming through the federal government to apply to that. So there is potentially maybe sooner, and who knows?
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
But there is discussion, so that's a good sign.
Yeah, I mean, it's at least back on people's radar
Mhm.
a
Yeah.
little bit.
Lisa,
Yes.
have you heard any more about the meeting that they thought it was on the 19th? Kind of a public meeting to let people in general know about where things are at?
I'll take a look and then I'll just send any information forward. I'll just, to look into that.
Okay. Well, I actually only had one thing, and it's just because we don't have a full crew tonight, this is normally the meeting we would do our election of a new chair and vice chair. Or we don't have our full house, and I don't know if any positions are up for, what do you want to say, re-upping or not. I don't know if anybody's time is up.
Time has expired.
So the
their
council
term.
usually does their appointment piece for commissions. I guess now they do it the second meeting in January, so that hasn't been done yet. So I'm just thinking we'll do the elections the first meeting, well, our meeting in February, rather than at this meeting. And that way we know we've got the people we're supposed to have, and we're not too far behind schedule. That's okay with everyone? And it'd be nice if everybody could be here, so hopefully they will be able to. And that's all I had, so I will unless anybody has anything else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I just have one question. Am I correct that there's a planning commission EDA meeting this month?
You are correct, on
The 20th?
20th,
20th, okay.
Thursday.
That's the task force meeting.
That's a task force meeting. This
There's
is
a
the
lot of
joint
meetings.
EDA and planning meeting.
That's the master
Okay,
plan.
that's quarterly,
The 20th?
correct.
I gotta check on Florida, so I don't lose my spot.
Oh, gee, you'd rather go to Florida than be with us?
As long as he won't let me go do that other trip to wherever he was gonna send me. Florida's the next best thing.
Grand Hotel in Jamaica.
There you go.
Well, enjoy your
Patrick.
time.
Okay, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Moved by Rick, is there a second? Second by John, all those in favor say aye. Aye,
Aye.
opposed, none, we're adjourned at 9:10. Sorry, it took longer this
But it was
evening.
some OT.
That's what happens with those discussion topics.